In today's video, I am going to share the 3 reasons that you won't retire, even though you know that you could retire. Now, I've helped hundreds of people transition from work to retirement. And in that time, I've identified specific beliefs, limiting beliefs, that keep people working, giving away their best years of health and mental well-being, even when they know that they have enough. And that's exactly why I'm making today's video, to help you identify and break these beliefs so that you can truly live the retirement of your dreams. Now, the first belief that keeps well-prepared retirees from retiring, despite knowing they have enough, is trust in the system. Now, most of you watching this video still naively trust in a broken system and outdated tools that are literally designed to scare you into working longer or to scare you out of spending your retirement savings. Now, that broken system consists of financial services companies that profit off of your assets and have a vested interest in those assets continuing to grow and remain untouched. Now, one of the ways that they achieve that outcome, which is you working longer, not drawing down your assets, not enjoying your retired life, is by continuing to promote and support the use of Monte Carlo or probability of success scores in retirement planning tools. Now, many of you watching this video may work with a financial advisor. Many of you will have had a professional financial plan built for you. Many of you will even have built your own financial plan using software like Bolden or FiCalc. And for many of you, those financial plans will show a reasonable or a high probability of success score, and yet you'll still be working. And so why is that? Well, Monte Carlo or probability of success scores simply aren't actionable or practical. Those scores don't tell you, number 1, if any adjustments to your plan would be necessary, number 2, when those adjustments might be needed, and then number 3, how big the adjustment might need to be if an adjustment were necessary. Now, take for instance a financial plan with a probability of success score of 95%. You might see that and say to yourself, 95%, pretty high, right? That's a good score. And then the next thought would naturally be, what do I do with that? Like, is that good enough? Now, I've spoken to dozens of people in this exact position, right? They know they have enough money, but they don't know what their money can do for them or the risks that would be involved if they were to use their money simply off of a score. And as a result, they stay in a job that they don't, admittedly, they don't hate it, but they don't love it, but at least they stay with it because they know what to expect with that job versus moving into retirement, even if they have a good score, they don't know what to expect. Now, at the root of this is the fact that a probability of success score is not a plan for a successful retirement, in the same way that seeing your weight on the scale is not a plan for a successful weight loss journey. So Derek Tharp, a financial planner on the advisory board at Income Labs, did some really fascinating research to find out what a 95% probability of success score would really mean in execution. So in an article published on Kitsis.com titled "Reframing Monte Carlo Results to Increase Trust in Dynamic Retirement Spending," Derek writes the following: while some, myself included, have argued that probability of adjustment would be a better way to frame probability of success. So for example, when you're discussing a probability of success of 95%, you might reframe it as a 5% probability of adjustment. Derek continues by saying, I've also written about the ease of misinterpreting this framing too. For instance, while it's true that a plan with a 95% probability of success would be consistent with 5% of plans historically needed to make an adjustment to avoid depleting the portfolio, that's not the same as asking whether a retiree would have made an adjustment if they were proactively planning and adjusting as needed. So for context here, what Derek's actually saying is that just because in only 5% of the scenarios that 95% plan failed does not mean that there would not have been many scenarios categorized as quote-unquote success in which a retiree would have still wanted to proactively make an adjustment in order to have either a higher quality of life or more margin for error, right? Because if we play this out, you could imagine that there's this 95% probability of success. In 5% of the scenarios, the portfolio depletes, but in some percentage of the scenarios, the portfolio ends up having such a tiny margin of error that you don't feel comfortable. In some larger percent of the scenarios, the portfolio ends up so tight that you cut spending and you live on less money than you might ever have considered, right? So just because there's 95% success doesn't mean that all of those 95% of tested scenarios have a high quality of life or good outcomes, right? Good meaning they're not the worst outcome, but they're not necessarily by definition a good outcome. Derek continues, perhaps counterintuitively, I previously reported that when planning to a constant 95% probability of success, downward adjustments would have been called for in over 96% of the scenarios. Furthermore, in 15% of those cases, those adjustments would have been significant, with large downward adjustments in spending of at least 35% below the initial spending level. So again, my commentary on this, the key point here that Derek is saying is that planning for a 95% constant probability of success would actually require changes be made throughout the person's retirement. Because when you see a 95% probability of success in your software, it's only 95% at that exact instant, because the minute you get older and the minute the market goes up 1% or down 1%, the actual rate of success changes. You just don't see that reflected, because a Monte Carlo score is kind of like taking a picture of your weight on the scale. Unless you're going to stand on the scale for the rest of your life and do everything else in your life while standing on the scale, you don't actually know your weight at all points in time across all days of your life. The same is true for your Monte Carlo score. Unless you're going to hit refresh on your software every second of every day and keep your eyes glued to it, you don't actually know what your success rate is in real time. So finally, Derek concludes, details aside, the key point here is that none of this is intuitive, right? Likely contradicting the general warm and fuzzy feelings someone might have from a 95% probability of success. The degree or frequency of adjustments is not made at all clear by simply telling someone their probability of success for a plan was 95%. Those of you that have high Monte Carlo scores but haven't taken action based on those scores likely intuitively have a sense of what Derek is talking about, even if you don't have the exact words for it. But even beyond that, Monte Carlo scores actually also optimize for the outcomes that are best for the financial services companies rather than the individual retiree like you. So for example, Monte Carlo scores provide a score but no actual plan, right? No matter the score, this actually reduces retirement confidence rather than increasing confidence, because you don't have a plan, you just have a score. Meaning you retire later, or you spend less, or you continue to save even beyond the point where that saving is required. Or another example, a Monte Carlo score will always improve if you tell the software that you will either work longer, spend less, or save more. And because the score is kind of gamified, meaning the software is all about showing a visual representation of a higher or lower score, then simply using Monte Carlo software will always reinforce the idea that working longer, spending less, or saving more is simply better, right? Because you just get a higher score whenever you do any of those things. Now, if you find yourself worried about how to interpret your Monte Carlo score, or how to assess your retirement readiness, click the first link in the description below to watch a short video that I put together. It goes over the exact system I use to help retirees create sustainable, dynamic retirement spending systems rather than plans. Okay, now this all leads pretty neatly into the second belief that keeps well-prepared retirees from retiring despite knowing that they have enough. That second belief is what I call chasing the high score, right? So the more money you save, the higher your score. All your working life, you're taught to shoot for the highest score, right? Save up as much as possible for your retirement. In pursuit of that achievement, you learn to, flex a certain set of muscles, right? Those muscles become familiar, they become comfortable. And the reality is, the more you flex those muscles, right? The savings and frugality muscles, the more your results compound. So the more frugal you are, the more you save. The more you save, the higher the number in your bank or retirement account is. The more in your retirement account, the higher your score or probability of success becomes. It's this virtuous cycle that is beneficial until it's not, right? And that cycle can easily become an addiction that tears you away from your original purpose, which is to stash away money to fund enjoyment during retirement. So in reality, achieving the highest score often comes at the expense of that enjoyment, right? And there are countless studies out there that support this exact idea. So this study on the screen here, done by Kasser and Ryan, found that prioritizing extrinsic goals like money or status was associated with lower well-being, higher anxiety, depression, and lower overall life satisfaction. Or this study here by Diener et al. From 2006 found that when chasing wealth becomes an obsession, the effort, right? So the long hours, neglected relationship, declining health, those things outweigh the fleeting happiness of the financial gains. Now, ultimately, research shows that chasing wealth, like chasing a high score in a video game, traps you in a cycle of stress and comparison. You find yourself constantly comparing your future score to your last score, rather than asking yourself, how can I enjoy this once in a lifetime, right? Literally, we all only get one life, right? So how can I enjoy this once in a lifetime experience? To be fair, it is entirely understandable how we might get caught up in this hamster wheel, right? Just a few minutes ago, remember how I said the more you flex those muscles, the more your results compound? It's also true that the more you flex those muscles, the more comfortable you get with flexing those muscles. And by virtue of that, the less comfortable you get with flexing other muscles. So if you spend your whole life sharpening and flexing your savings muscles, it's no surprise that it's going to be difficult and also extremely uncomfortable to stop flexing the muscles that you're familiar with and begin flexing a whole new set of muscles. So for example, your spending muscle. Which leads us nicely and neatly to the third and final belief that keeps well-prepared retirees from retiring despite knowing that they have enough. And that third belief is what I call the pursuit of perfection. Now, of course, you've heard the cliche that perfection is the enemy of progress, but it really could not be more true in the case of retirement. See, I speak to people every week who know that they have enough money, but are scared to make a change, right? To leave work and retire. And that's because they have this misconception that it's all or nothing. That all or nothing mentality ends up resulting in people chasing perfection, right? They're waiting for the perfect plan, or they're waiting for the perfect moment. They're expecting that they will have all of their ducks in a row before they make any change at all. So to use the prior limiting belief as an example, maybe you've spent 30 years flexing your savings muscles, saving $30,000 a year, and once you retire, you want to spend $150,000 a year. And you might look at that and say, oh boy, that's a huge 180, literally 180. You'd be going from saving $30,000 a year to spending $150,000 a year, which is actually literally an $180,000 a year change. And even though you've arrived at retirement with maybe $3 or $5 million, that change is simply too large a psychological jump to swallow in one step. And so you keep fiddling with the plan, trying to perfect the plan, telling yourself that once you have all your ducks in a row, then you'll feel comfortable spending that $150,000 in retirement. But it doesn't really work that way. If you hadn't run for 30 years and one day you decided to go out for a run, you wouldn't start by running a marathon on day one, right? That prior example is kind of the equivalent. You'd never expect that of yourself. And yet that often feels like what we expect of ourselves with retirement. So a far better frame of mind would be one of incremental small steps, one where you take a small step at a time, a step that you can guarantee you will execute, that you can guarantee you will also succeed at, so that you can build those kind of new baby muscles. Maybe you've always done biceps and shoulders. Now today you're going to go do back and triceps. And ultimately you want to build confidence in those new muscle groups over time. So in this case, a spending muscle set. Maybe this looks like moving away from Monte Carlo scores, which is familiar and known, towards a dynamic strategy like modern guardrails. Maybe rather than leaving work entirely, it might look like using all your vacation days and stopping contributing to retirement accounts, but staying at your employer, right? After all, when you have enough money, you may not want to stop working, but you can certainly stop saving and you can certainly use your time off. Maybe another option is to to continue using all your vacation days and continuing not to save to retirement accounts, but you also at the same time go from a full-time position to a part-time position. You can see where I'm going with this. Incremental steps that help you make progress rather than trying to plan for perfection and make some kind of Evel Knievel style jump across the Grand Canyon on your first attempt, right? So I'll leave you with a parting thought. It's time to make a choice, right? Are you going to continue to let bad actors and broken systems continue to manipulate you into decisions that are good for them, but bad for you? Are you going to continue to mindlessly shoot for the highest score, even after you've already won the game? And are you going to continue to let your pursuit of perfection keep you from having small but incremental and beautiful goals? If you're ready to make a change and you simply don't know where to start, I'd like to help, right? You can click the first link in the description below this video to watch another short video that I put together, and it goes over the exact system I use to help retirees create sustainable, dynamic retirement spending systems. So with that, thank you as always for your time and attention. See you in the next video.